Hi, and welcome to our next Your Story interview, where we're getting to know people in our church family better and hearing about how God has been working in their lives. And, as you watch these, I think you'll realize just how uniquely each of us have been created, but also how we all have this common thread running through our lives. We have triumph and tragedy, highs and lows, the good and the bad, and really how we all have this overwhelming need for a Savior. And aren't we so thankful that God has given us Jesus and also just continues to walk alongside us, meeting each of our needs throughout our lives. And, as you watch these interviews, I really hope that it leads you to think about your own story, how God's been working in your life and in the lives of the people around you. It really has made me think about my story, and it has me wondering about your story. Hi, I've got Tony Laenen with me. Tony, welcome, and thank you for coming to talk to us today and share your story with us.
You're welcome.
So would you want to just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, I think I'll begin by saying that my parents and we came from Europe. My dad and my grandfather were both baptized Catholic in the city of Maastricht, and my mom was baptized as a Lutheran in the Eastern Prussia, which is now Poland, in the city of Breslau, which is now Wrocław in Poland. And that's about it. They were baptized, but they never spoke about God. And so that I grew up in a household that was, we didn't speak about God, and I never learned about the Bible. But I also want to say that God was there, and He knew me way before I knew Him. And I know my mom, for instance, talks about me being a miracle. And that she had many miscarriages before I was finally born when she was about almost 40 years of age. And then also there was a miracle about being born in Europe and having to journey out of Europe in German-occupied Europe and getting out of there during the war. And so that was a miracle as well. And then, of course, during my lifetime, I could see back, too. Even though I was not baptized until I was 33 years of age, and I did not take Jesus as my Savior until then, I think that I knew somehow that God was with me in the things that happened to me and the things that were happening around me. So I went to my youth I spent in Buffalo, New York, in cold weather there, and the ice and the snow, going to school until I was in through my grade school years and 1 year in high school. And then my grandfather, who was a patriarch of our family, in fact, we lived with my grandfather, we moved to Florida because he decided to retire at the age of 78 there in Florida. And so we moved with him. And I went to high school. And later on, after I went through the military, through the Navy, through college in Florida. During my military years, I spent with the Navy in Naval Air as a radar technician, and I flew in spy planes in Japan. And that was very exciting, and I knew God was with me then because we got into some fairly harrowing situations there. And actually, that's when I first got to know a little bit closer about God because I met a chaplain there in the Navy and got to be close to him and his family. And I also got to be very, very close to a Japanese family, and rather than run around like many people did, going to bars and staying with women and things like that a lot of the Navy guys did, I spent my time learning about a Japanese family. They took me in just like one of them, and I know God had something to do with that. He was just so kind, so loving, and the family was so loving to me. And then, of course, I went to school, went to the University of Florida, and got a degree in civil engineering. And then I worked for the U.S. Geological Survey for 34 years before I retired. And then I did hydrology consulting for another 15 years after that. My family, as I mentioned, I was baptized at 33. I was baptized with my children, my infant son and my 3-year-old daughter at a Lutheran church in Portland. My wife was baptized prior to me. She was baptized in the Baptist church when she was a youngster. And then my family, Christianity and my faith in Christ and my knowledge about Christ came in very, very small increments and along my lifetime. I never had any great revelations or anything like that. It just came to me in small steps, and I'm still learning in very small steps. And at any rate, as I said, I was baptized in a Lutheran church, and right away the pastor asked if I would work and be superintendent of the Sunday school, and and if Carol would be one of the teachers there. And so that's how I started off, not knowing any of the Bible lessons. I learned as I taught.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you may have gotten like sprinkled for your baptism, but you got dunked, right?
Into the ministry. Absolutely. But it was good. It was wonderful to learn along with the small children the Bible lessons and to become engrossed in it. And that's still a good mode of operation, is to teach, because you learn so much.
Yes, that's
when
true.
you teach.
You do. You learn in a completely different way when you teach. Really,
Absolutely.
Yeah, with a lot of depth.
And so my wife died. My first wife died when she was 47 years of age, and that left me devastated. And I walked away from church and from God at that time. I just couldn't understand why He would let something like that happen. And but it was something that my wife, she was completely reconciled with it. But I just was so hard-headed, I couldn't understand it. And it took me a while to get back to talking with God. And when I came back to church, my son helped me get back. He says, "Dad, I want to meet with young people and be with young people." And so we went back because of that. And I met a man. His name was Jeff Embler, and he worked at the church in the theatrical group there, and he put plays on at the church, and he asked if I would do painting for him, do stage painting for him. And I did, and that was wonderful. But more than that, he worked with Lutheran Community Services helping people. And he got me back into thinking about others. And so that brought me back to thinking about Jesus and talking to Jesus and asking Jesus where I needed to be and what I needed to do. And it was just so wonderful getting back into the fold of Christ and being able to communicate with him, because I had lost all communication. So this gentleman, I know people ask me sometimes, do you have anybody or do you have people that have helped you along in your lifetime that you emulate? And I have to say that God brought him along in my life, and he brought me back. And I know there were others, like I can think of a couple of teachers that helped me along in my life, but not in the same way. And so then I became more active in the church.
Kind of rededicated.
And rededicated myself, yeah, to it. In fact, I got to be church president of the council, and not that worked out any good because our pastor left.
Maybe you were just too good. He couldn't live in your shadow.
I'm afraid and then Carol and I helped to bring in a new pastor. We did the research and we're on the committee to bring in a new pastor, and we did that work. But more than that, and then I met Carol, too, my wife, and that was kind of a comedic. I don't think comedic is the word to it.
I don't know if she would love that either, right?
But we met online. And it was my son that got me there again. He says, Dad, you need to get out and meet people and meet women and go out on a date every once in a while. And I says, but I'm not into that. And so I went out on a couple of coffee dates, and I said, this is not working. And then online I saw this nice photograph of this beautiful lady with her granddaughter in her lap. And I says, well, that's not a glamour photo. That's something that I really like. And so I contacted her, and we met in Centralia, which is between Portland and where she was living in Tacoma area. And we went and to the stores there. They're those brand stores that are there in Centralia. And we went to a Bible store, and we got a Max Lucado devotion book. And then for the next few months, we did devotions online and learned about one another.
That's neat. That's a great way to meet and foundation for a relationship, right?
It was, because we talked about everything we really needed to talk about.
Yeah.
And we got to know one another very, very well. Talking about the Bible, talking about different studies, and talking about how we believed in Jesus, and then talking about our lives and how they interacted.
That's great.
And then, of course, I was still working at the time as a consultant, and then we decided that we needed to start to go in and travel and do things together like that, and also look for a different place besides Portland to live in. And that's where we came to Jacksonville, and how we got here. And we went all up and down the I-5 corridor from Portland to California, And I said, no, we're not going to go any further. But we did find this wonderful community here and decided to locate here. And so that's what we did 7 years ago.
Yeah, nice choice. So have you been here at Jacksonville Press for all of that time?
We did look into going to the church in down south in Applegate Community Church there, but that seemed like a little bit too far to travel. And then when we came here, we felt very, very good about the Bible studies that were being done here, and just the way the Bible was taught here, and the sermons, the way they were given. And we also felt the family, the church family here. And so we decided to settle in Jacksonville Presbyterian.
Yeah, well, we're super glad you did. We're happy to have you as part of our church family.
It's been wonderful.
Good. Okay, so tell me a little bit about, was there a stage in your life, if you could do it over again, that you would go back and redo something, or do you feel like the lessons that you've learned throughout each stage were more important than maybe the details of what was going on?
Well, I look back at my loss with my wife, Julie, and it was a lesson. It was a very, very difficult lesson. I would have loved to have her and we still being married and have that relationship now, and we go into our old age. But I know that we'll be together again. Mm-hmm. You know, it's something that is inevitable, and I can still feel her presence. And I would never have met Carol, which is another wonderful experience in my life, and it's a renewal. Mm-hmm. I think that we have to go through life, and we have to understand that we're here on this earth just temporarily, and that our love for Christ and His love for us is the most important thing, and that our love for one another is important too, and we have to do the best we can with that, and the best that we can with what is given us. Mm-hmm. And Christ reminds us that we have these imperfections, and we just have to live and learn and understand, and it's just part of life. It's tough. Again, it would have been wonderful to still be here with my first love, mm-hmm. and she still is my first love. But I have now another life and a renewal, and each day is a life of renewal. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the lessons, I wouldn't do things over again, even though they were difficult. Mm-hmm. Those lessons were something that you need in your life to be able to teach others, mm-hmm. to be able to understand where we are in this world and where we are going to go in the future in heaven. Although, if we understand things perfectly and we take our spirit that we have been given, we are already in heaven. Mm. We're already there. And we have to just be able to remember that we need to make that communication.
Yeah, those hard times in life really just shows us such evidence of God taking ashes, like beauty from ashes, right? And creating new great things that he could not have done if these tragedies didn't happen in our lives, which doesn't make them easy, but gives him even more opportunity to show us his goodness.
From the ashes, the clay is created that creates new things. Yeah.
That's a really good perspective. So you told us you alluded to a lot of very interesting things that have happened in your life, living through the war, well, even before that, coming here from Europe during the war, and then serving in the Navy, and your art, all sorts of things. So can you tell us a little bit about the gift that you have as an artist? You are an artist and do lots of really great artworks. How has that been instrumental in your life, and how has God worked through that? You alluded a little bit to it in that it was your art that kind of brought you to meet the man who helped.
Correct.
Yeah, to help
Art has been part of my communication. I do things more visually than I do auditory. I'm a poor communicator with respect to being able to express myself
You're doing a great job right now, so I don't know if I believe you on that one.
But visually, I'm able to communicate with people, and I'm able to, I think, give this way. And so if somebody asks me to help them, that's a good way for me to help a person. Say, hey, help me with, in the theater, in the theatrical things, I help with the build the sets and help to paint the sets. That was easy for me. Yet I could give that as a gift to someone, and that certainly was a gift that was transitional, because you build it, and here a couple weeks later it was gone.
Right.
It was almost like building a sandcastle. But that's okay, because it contributed to something that people were able to give as well. And I felt that was a great way for a church to participate in the community. They were giving very ethical and spiritual types of plays. For instance, one of the plays was something by Bonhoeffer.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, something that I think the public needs to see and to hear. And then, of course, you bring people into the church that are not churched people. And that's a wonderful way to communicate with people that are non-believers or unbelievers,
right.
and so that was a good way to for me at least to help with being kind of an evangelist,
Yeah,
but not really being. Well, not one with different skills.
Yeah.
It's just like Paul said, we each have our own different skills, a set of skills that we work with, and but we are to use them.
Yes.
And
yeah, that sounds like you found lots of great ways to use your gifts of art, and because I know you also did some artwork with your church, right?
Right. And I mentioned that to you. We had an art fair, and I had beforehand done a banner 4x6 that was done in felt. And so we had an intern that wanted to do something within the community, and so he put together an art fair that lasted for 2 weeks at our church that included people from the community, as well as many people from the church. A lot of the men and women that did different kinds of art, different kinds of fabric, like people, like the women that did the weaving and the knitting, and women that did watercolors and pastels and oils, and then men that did woodworking and things like that. And we had quite a nice affair within the confines of the sanctuary. Mm-hmm. And we had the same thing. We could take the pews, there were big wooden pews, but we had to lift them out of the way and everything. And we had opened up the space, and we turned it into a fair, and with tables and places where people could buy things as well. But mostly to show what people were doing in the community. And that's where I did more of these banners and did felt work.
Yeah, it's beautiful work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really nice. Is there anything in your life that you feel most proud of? Besides, I mean, a lot of the things you've already told us are definitely things to feel proud of. Is there anything else that you look back on and you're really just proud of that? Or a way that God worked through you that you're really proud of?
Well, of course, I'm proud of my family. Mm-hmm. You're not supposed to be proud, by the way.
Well,
but we are. I mean, we're only human, and yes, I'm proud that my family, and now that I've married Carol and have a second family, I'm proud of them as well. Everyone has turned out. Were there no problems? And I say this because there's so many problems with families in this world, both medically and mentally and socially. But my family has had no drug problems. They have had no problems in work. Everybody has their little medical things that happen to them, but everybody is very, very well adjusted. I wish that a couple of the boys would be going more regularly to church. But I think that this will come in time too. I know that things have gone slowly with myself. It's taken me a long time to take a more serious look at God and look at what Jesus is saying, rather than just take things. I think when I first was baptized, I just wanted it to be part of a family thing, kind of a family tradition. I didn't look at it as a way of life. I looked at it more as just fitting in. And I performed, and I did things just to be part of the church family. I wasn't really part of it, and I think that's where my boys are now, and I hope that at some point in time. And we continue to work at our family and try to make them understand what is happening.
Right. The religion becomes more about a relationship with Christ instead of just
rather than it being a religion, it becomes a relationship. Yeah. And so, but I'm still proud of the family, and not only my family, my wife's family as well.
Yeah.
And I think we get along well together, and I think that's part of growing older and part of growing up. And I know that I've done artwork, it's okay, and I've done other things. I've worked with families. I've worked with refugee families through Lutheran Community Services, helping to get them settled. And Carol has helped along with me, and we've worked with homeless families, bringing them into the church. Our church in Portland, we had a rotation, and we would actually have them living in our church for a week, and that rotation would occur about every month and a half. We'd have the families living there, have about half a dozen to a dozen families living in the Sunday school rooms and things, and we were part of that program, and I felt very good about that, and felt very good with working with those missions. Won't necessarily say I was proud. It was hard work, and I don't know if everything we did was the best, but I think we tried.
Yeah. And I know that you are on the missions team here at our church. Is that where you started your passion for missions, is at your church in Portland? Is that where it originated?
Correct. The fellow that I worked with the Thespian group, he brought me into Lutheran Community Services, and I started helping with the settlement of refugees. And that was my first introduction to doing missionary type work.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is there anything that you see that you would like us to do more here in Jacksonville in regards to our missions and our programs here?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I would almost like to see us do less. I think we spread it. I think we spread ourselves thin, and I think that we need to take a little bit more time and work harder at more specifically and kind of pick and choose where we need to put our effort. And I think it needs to be in the direction that our pastor chooses as well. I know that he is very interested in the disabled and the disabled children right now. And that's one of the things I think that we need to pick up on and we need to work towards. I think also our local missions, I think we have spread ourselves to where we have quite a few missions that we help, and I think that maybe we should just try to work harder and physically help out more, put our own selves into the community work, which is Medford as a greater community, and try to do fewer things, but it's hard to say no.
There's so many great things to support, right?
Exactly. And so I understand why we get ourselves involved with so many things, because it's hard to say, no, we can't do it, because we feel that we've got the ability, yet it again is just like how much time we have to spend. You know, we have to have the priorities as well.
Yeah.
So that's my only comment.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. You've lived a very interesting life. Is there any one story that you want to share? I know you wrote your book that is called, what was it called?
The Journey.
The Journey.
Yeah.
And you also have done a number of things. Is there any little story that you want to share with us from that or from any other time in your life that
Well, now that I'm getting older and I've experienced some pretty heavy-duty medical things that have occurred to me recently, this last year and a half have been rough, and I found Jesus to be, well, he's renewed me physically twice now. It's just amazing because I've had a couple of major surgeries. First, my kidney taken out, and I dropped down. I was feeling very, very low, and my weight was down to 125 pounds, and I'm over 6 foot in height, and that's not very much weight. And so my health was very depleted, and then I had the operation, and all of a sudden I sprang back. And then I had another one. My intestines, I stopped being able to eat food, and they had to do a bypass. And I've sprung back again. And the Lord is such a wonderful healer and a great comforter. Oh, he is a wonderful comforter. I mean, I can't begin to tell you how much peace he gives me. And he gives me a wonderful wife, too, that supports me and brings comfort, and a wonderful church that gives prayer, and I can feel those prayers coming to me. I just can't begin to give thanks to this church community and the people that I've met and the friends that I've made here. It's wonderful, and it's something that is part of the growth, my Christian growth, and my belief. And you just have to learn. And yeah, there are hardships, but they really haven't been.
Perspective, right?
Yeah, it's perspective, yeah. And I don't know if people in the church would recognize me as I sit here, but they probably recognize me walking. Carol and I walking to church every morning. We get a lot of people waving as we're walking to church, and that's a good feeling too.
Yeah. Well, that is all such an encouragement as we pray for people, and I have specifically been praying for you to know that you've really felt those prayers and that God has just been faithful to answer them in your life and use them as encouragement and peace to you too is really inspiring, I feel like. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it is. I just can't believe how each time I feel so reborn and so renewed, and he gives so much strength. And you just have to be able to, and it reminds me, I'm not much of a communicator, but it reminds me of Tavia in Fiddler on the Roof. And as I grow older, I become more fluid in my conversations with God, and he was just able to start talking and talk about anything and everything with God, and I'm a little bit more constrained, and when I pray each evening, and it's more regimented, but I'm becoming more fluid too, in that when I speak with God, I speak to him about other things, little things, things that you wouldn't normally I wouldn't have normally communicated with him, and it just brings me back to that visual I have of the Father, Octavia, and Fiddler on the Roof, and how he was so fluid with his communication. I think we need to all work on that same way of talking.
Yeah. Definitely treating God as someone who wants to hear from us and cares about every detail, because he does, instead of, we don't need to tiptoe to him or edit what we say to him.
No.
Yeah.
No. He knows us anyhow.
He does. He knows it anyhow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you feel like we should know about you or that's important for you to share?
Well, no, just other than I give thanks to everybody here, those that have prayed for me, those that come to this church, the church community. I give thanks to this community of Jacksonville. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to live. I just give thanks to be able to live in this country, although it seems crazy now. There is a freedom here. It's a little bit of a crazy freedom, and I think we have to learn to live in a country yet still be under its dictates. I know that many times you say to somebody, especially when you go to a foreign country, you know, we live in a country that has politicians and they run things, but we're not those people that are running things. We have our own community, and we're people just like you. And I think that that's how we need to live our lives. We can't do anything about it. God knows what's happening, and it will happen under God. We have no power there.
Thank goodness.
And thank goodness.
Yeah.
And some of the crazy things that are happening, only God knows about it.
That's right.
So that's the way we need to live life.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tony, for sharing. I feel like your faith and your story is so inspiring and really encouraging. And I know that you say that you're not great at communication, but you have communicated your story and your heart really beautifully, and how God has worked in your life. And it's really been a blessing for all of us who have been able to hear it and witness it. So thank you very much for that.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you too, Joy, for doing this.
You're welcome.
Yeah.